All right, guys. Hi, I'm sorry I can't be with you today. Okay, but we are still going to do a little bit of notes, and then when I get back, we'll practice some more together. So get out your book. If you have to go back in the room to grab it, go ahead and do so. You can pause the video. We're going to be on page 17, okay? Page 17. All right, and today our notes are going to be similar to what we did on Friday, where it's nothing really that new, but now we're just applying it to inequalities, okay? So on Friday, we talked about solving to get a variable by itself. Today, we're going to be doing the same thing, but now we're going to be looking at multiplication and division, okay? So on the bottom, actually, we'll start in the middle of page 17 here. We have something super important. This box right here is super duper important. Let's see. Okay, so give yourself a big star right here. This is super important. We could highlight the whole thing if we really wanted. Ooh, nice like this. This box is going to be like our big rule for today. Okay, and we're just going to copy it down first, and then it might catch on as we go. It says if you multiply both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you flip the sign. Okay, you flip the sign. Okay, and that's crucial. And then, so if we are multiplying both sides, we flip it. And if we are dividing both sides by a negative number, you need to flip the sign. Okay? So this is a moment where Ms. Dolan really wishes that she could do a backflip, because then if we were in class, I would just whip out a backflip real quick, and then you guys would never forget this roll. But unfortunately, I can't, so you're just going to have to use your imagination. But we flip the sign when we are multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So let's do a couple of these together. Look at number 1. Okay, so again, I see that I need to get my variable by itself. And I notice that I have a fraction bar. Okay, I've got a fraction bar going on right here. But that doesn't freak me out, because I know that that fraction bar is really a division sign. Okay, so to do the opposite would mean I need to do the inverse, which is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. Okay, when I do that, I cross it off. Oh, I should have my line down the middle like a good mathematician. Okay, that line tells me whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other side. So now I have b left here. And on the other side, I have 2 times 4, which gives me 8. Okay, and now here's my new step. Okay, so I need to look at the number that I multiplied both sides by. Okay, and I ask myself, okay, is this number positive or negative? Well, it's positive. Okay, because it's positive, my inequality sign stays the same, and I just bring it down. Okay. Once we bring it down, we are ready to graph. So I'm going to draw my number line. I know that my 8 is my critical number, so it goes in the middle. I put one number on either side of it. And now I look at my symbol, and I need to figure out what kind of a circle I'm going to have and where I'm going to shade. I'm going to have an open circle, and I'm going to shade to the right because it's greater than. All right, let's do the next one. Look at number 2. Okay, so again, I'm going to draw my line down the middle. I notice that I have my y here. That's what I'm trying to get by itself. And I know that I have negative 9 times y. That's what's happening. So to do the inverse, I'm going to have to divide by negative 9. I do it to both sides. So my negative 9s go away. I bring my y down. And on the other side, I have a negative 7. Now I have to look at what I divided both sides by. And I have to ask myself, is this number positive or negative? Well, this is a negative number. Because it's a negative number, look at that, exclamation points. I got to do a flip of my sign. So I take my sign, I bring it down, but now it needs to be eating the other side. Okay, so I flip my sign. That's our important part for today. Imagine me doing a backflip. If it's negative, it would be a backflip. Okay, so I draw my number line, start with a negative 7 in the middle. I go one number on either side. And now I got to figure out what kind of a dot I'm going to have. I'm going to have a closed dot, and I am shading to the left, where y is less than negative 7. All right, and let's look at our last one, number 3. Okay, now when we look at this one, we see a negative sign like right out front, like this. Okay, I know when I have a negative sign out front, I'm allowed to move that to the top or to the bottom, not both, but one or the other. My good rule of thumb here is I always want to move that to be with my number. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite it with my K up top, and I'm just going to move that negative to the bottom to be with the number. It just keeps me organized. And then I bring the rest down. Okay, now I have my line. I know that division sign, that fraction bar is really division. So to do the opposite, I need to multiply both sides by -4. So I am left with K, and on the other side, I have a +4. Now I can look at my number that I multiplied both sides by. I see that it is negative. Oh my, negative. That tells me that I need to flip my sign. Cue the backflip. In fact, it'd be a very negative situation if Ms. Dolan did a backflip. Very negative situation. So because I'm multiplying by a negative, I know I have to flip my sign. And now I graph. Start with my 4, my critical number in the middle. I have my numbers on either side. I have an open circle on 4, and I shade to the left. All right, so that's just practicing with my rules. Let's try some harder ones. Flip your paper over. Okay, and we're just gonna jump around. We're not gonna do all of these, but let's just pick a couple here. So let's look at number 4. If I look at number 4, I notice that I have a negative sign out front. So it looks like my T is by itself. However, I still have a negative with it. I need to get rid of that negative in order to get T by itself. So there's really that -1. That's our invisible math. Okay, there's really a -1, and it's attached by multiplication. So to do the inverse, I'm going to divide both sides by -1. Draw my line down the middle. So I know that I need to bring the T down. And now when I do 1/2 divided by -1 in my calculator, I'm just going to get -1/2. Okay? Now I look at what I divided both sides by. Divided by a -1. I divided by a negative, which tells me I need to flip. So I flip my sign. Okay? And we're going to pause. We're not going to graph at this point. Okay, so there's that one. All right, let's do one more together here. Okay, so I look at number 5. Now, this one looks super overwhelming to us because we see a big fraction with my variable. But you guys are smart, and we just got to dust off some cobwebs. So I see this negative fraction out front, and I see that it is attached to my W by multiplication. Okay, now there was a rule that we had way back when we used this fancy R word. Reciprocal. You remember that? So when I have a variable times a fraction, I can multiply both sides by the reciprocal. Now what is a reciprocal? A reciprocal is whenever we flip it. So my 5 was on the W, was on the bottom, now it's going to be on the top. And my 3 is now going to be on the bottom. Now this is important. I had a negative in my first one, so let's keep a negative in my second one. Doesn't matter where that negative goes. It could go with the 5 or the 3. I just need to have it in my fraction. Okay, now whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other. So I have -5 divided by 3. Okay, whenever I multiply by the reciprocal, my fractions go away. So I'm just left with W. And on the other side, we just need to punch that into our calculator, guys. And we are going to get -10. Okay, and now I look at what I multiplied both sides by. Multiplied by a negative. Negative situation. I'm going to need to flip my sign. Okay, and now, what do we notice about the order of this one? Well, we notice that it's not in the right order. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we need to flip it. We need to make my W first. We bring my -10 to the other side. Now look at my original problem right here. Who is my alligator eating? My alligator is eating the -10. So I need to keep it that way. So I'm going to flip it so that it's still eating that -10. Okay. This one right here is the one we would graph on a number line. All right. Let us... Let's do this one together. Number 9. Okay, let's look at number 9. Now, I notice my variable. I notice that I am multiplying 10 times x. So I'm going to do the inverse. I'm going to divide both sides by 10. Okay, because again, I have to do the same thing on both sides. So I bring my x down, my 10s go away. And now on the other side, I have a -2. Now, this is important. This is a super common mistake. Students see this negative sign and they say, oh, negative, I need to flip. However, think back to my rule. My rule has to do with the number I'm dividing by. So if I look at the number I'm dividing by, that number is positive. Okay, so because that number is positive, my sign stays the same. So don't be tricked. If you have a negative in the original problem up top, like it is up here, that doesn't mean we flip it. It's only the number that we divide by or multiply by. Okay? All right. I would like you to try number 6 and number 7. You can pause the video and try those out. All right, let's check our answer here. So number 6, I notice that I have a division sign. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. When I do that, I get x, and I get a -6 over here. And now I notice that what I'm multiplying is positive. Okay, even though there's a negative in the original problem, this is just like what we did down here. Okay, the number that I'm multiplying by is positive, which means my symbol stays the same. All right, and then 7, I have -2 times t. So in order to get rid of my -2, I have to do the inverse. So I'm going to divide by -2. So I'm left with t, and I have a +4 here because I have -8 divided by -2. And now I notice I'm dividing by a negative. Okay, so because I'm dividing by a negative, that tells me I need to flip my sign. All right. We are going to skip word problems today. Happy Monday. You can write me a thank you card later. Okay, but now let's look at solving equations where we now have multiple steps. Okay, and you guys have done this before. But again, let's just dust off some cobwebs, and now we're throwing in some inequalities. So it says here, what are the solutions of 9 plus 4t is greater than 21? Okay, so that's my question. I'm going to draw my line down the middle, like always. Here I am. I got to get my t by itself. Now, if you remember back when we were solving these, we talked about a variable cluster, right? We talked about that number that was right up against my variable. I'm going to circle that, and I always do that last. I always work outside first. So outside, I have this 9, and I notice that it's positive, right? It's a positive 9, which means to get rid of it, I need to subtract both sides by 9, okay? Again, because we do the inverse, so those go away. And I'm just left with a +4t. And on the other side here, I have a 12. Okay? Bring my sign down at this point because I'm subtracting 9. I'm not dividing or multiplying by -9. I'm subtracting 9. So I bring my 4t down, I bring my sign down, I bring my 12 down. Okay, now again, my goal is to get t by itself. I notice that I have 4 times t, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So I have my t. On the other side, I have 3. And now I look at the number that I'm dividing by, and I notice that it's positive, which means my sign stays the same. Okay, so my solution is t is greater than 3. All right, flip your paper over. We're going to do a couple more of these. Okay, so let's do A together. Okay, let's do A. So here, draw your line down the middle. Again, my goal is to get A by itself. Okay, I'm going to start by circling my variable cluster. That's what I'm going to do last. I need to work outside in. So first things first, I see I have a -7. I have a -7, so the inverse would be +7. So I'm going to add 7 to both sides. I bring -6a down, and I have a 24 once I add 17 plus 7. Now at this point, I've only added, so my sign needs to stay the same. And now my last step here is I get A by itself, is I need to divide both sides by -6. So I have a, and I have a negative 4. And now I have to look at what I divided by, negative, which tells me I have to flip my sign. So I flip my sign, back flipping. Okay? All right, I want you to try B on your own. And I'll leave this one on the screen so you can use it as a reference. But try B on your own. All right, so when we solve B, we draw a line down the middle. Okay, again, my goal here is I want to get n by itself. Here's my variable cluster. Okay, so I notice that I have a 5 outside, and it's a positive 5, so I'm going to be subtracting 5. I'm going to do the inverse. So I have negative 9 over here, and I have a negative 3n on the other side. At this point, I just subtracted, so my sign stays the same. And now I need to divide both sides by negative 3. So I have an n left over here. I have a 3 over here. And I notice that I'm dividing by a negative. Okay, it's negative, which tells me I need to flip my sign. However, I always need to make sure I write this in the correct order. My n is last, so I need to write it so my n comes first. Then I have my 3. If I look at this problem, my alligator is eating the 3, so we need to keep it that way over here. So we're going to write it so that it's eating the 3. And there's my inequality. All right, couple more, you guys. Stick with me. You guys are doing great. Flip your paper over. Again, we're skipping all of our word problems today. We'll come back to those tomorrow. Okay, let's look at this first one up here, using the distributive property. So now we see a set of parentheses. And again, this seems like it was ages ago. I can't believe we probably learned this, I think it's September. I feel like I know you guys so much more now. So here we have my first one. And I see a set of parentheses. Here they are. Which means before I do anything, I have to get rid of those parentheses. Now, I have a number outside. So we Angry Bird that. Remember, we distribute it. We give it to both things inside that set of parentheses. Okay? So now, I have 3 times t plus 3 times 1. And I bring the rest down. Okay? So all I did was I distributed. And remember, those arrows tell me to multiply. Okay, so once I distribute, I have 3t plus 3 minus 4t. Again, I'm just bringing everything down, keeping myself nice and organized. Now at this point, my job is to get t by itself, but if you notice, I have 2 t's on the same side. So what did I do with that? When I had 2 variables on the same side, what do? Right, I combine them, right? So I have a 3t and I have negative 4t, so I can put those together. So I have 3t plus negative 4t, and that gives me negative 1t. I'm going to bring the rest down. As so, everything comes down. And now this problem is starting to look a lot like what we did on the last page. Okay, so again, my goal right now is to get t by itself. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, because again, my variable cluster is last. So I have negative 1t is greater than or equal to negative 8. Now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. So I have t, I have an 8. And now look at what I'm dividing by. Oh, it's a negative, which tells me this sign right here needs to flip. Okay? So that was a lot of work. There's a lot of steps there. All right? Let's do one more together. Okay, so here I have my problem. I notice a set of parentheses right here. Okay, to get rid of those, I'm going to distribute. Now, what am I distributing? Am I distributing a positive or negative 2? A negative 2, okay? So when I bring everything down, let's start there. We'll just bring everything down. Now I'm going to do negative 2 times 4m plus negative 2 times 7. Okay, so I'm multiplying by that negative 2. That'll give me my new line of 15 is less than or equal to 5 minus 8m minus 14. Okay, all I did there was I multiplied what I distributed. Now, my job is to get n by itself, okay? But I noticed that I have some like terms over here, right? I have a number without a variable and a number without a variable. So let's put those together. I have 5 plus negative 14. When I have 5 plus negative 14, I'm going to get negative 9. I bring the rest down. So far, nothing else has changed. And now I'm going to get n by itself. Okay, so here's my variable cluster. I'm going to do that last. I add 9 to both sides, so I have 24. Bring my negative 8m down. Bring my sign down. Now to get n by itself, I need to divide both sides by negative 8. So I have a negative 3 on this side and m on the other side, because that's what left. And I noticed that I am dividing by a negative number, so I have to flip my sign. Okay, so I flip my sign. And now I need to make sure that I'm written in the correct order. Okay, so we're putting all these steps together. And my alligator was eating the negative 3, so let's keep it that way. All right. Okay, guys, at this point, this is where we're going to stop for today. So after this video, what I want you to do is I want you to find a partner, and you're going to go to page 21. Okay, so find a partner, go to page 21. And partner 1 is going to do the first column, while partner 2 does the second column. Okay, and your answers should match. Okay, you should have the same answer on either side, so you can check yourself as you go. So you're only doing one column, either the first or the second. Okay, when you are done, if you finish, I want you to rip it out, and you can make a pile on my desk for when I get back. See you soon, guys.